इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। प्रणाम, वणकम एंड जय हिंद। आज हम इंडिया यूएस रिलेशंस के बारे में बात करेंगे। नीड फॉर अ न्यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग, एक नया सोच विचार और नया समझ बूझ की जरूरत है भारत और यूएसए के बीच में। और इसके बारे में बात करने के लिए मेरे साथ हैं मेरे पुराने गुरु ब्रिगेडियर अरुण सहगल। Good evening, sir, and welcome to Gunner Shot on this very important topic. Your mic is muted, sir. Your mic is still muted. Yeah. So as I was saying, sir, welcome once again to Gunner Shot. It's been a long time since we've had a discussion. And on this day when, just after the day when US has carried out 85 strikes in over 7 places in West Asia, this is an important topic for us to discuss. Don't you think so? And once you give your opening views, I'll put across a frame on which we're going to discuss with a map so that everyone understands it better. Your opening idea, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's always an honor to be on your show and to share some perspectives of mine. As far as Indo-US relationship is concerned, as far as India is concerned, it looks at it as a most consequential relationship. However, despite the fact that we have a very up and coming relationship, we have walked the talk, we had a state visit by the Prime Minister, we are moving in the direction of setting up higher degree of technology cooperation in critical technologies. We are resolving our differences on large number of issues. Only yesterday, the MQ-9B got a clearance, despite the fact there were rumors in the marketplace that will not come, etc. So we are heavily involved in each other. But the reality is, how do we look at this relationship? There are some reliability issues between the two sides. And they are driven by ideology perspectives. And number two, even more importantly, is the power perceptions. The United States power perceptions of a unipolar power and wanting to continue its global dominance, both in terms of military capacity, economic capabilities, and technological capacities. And India, as an emerging power, wants to shape its strategic space, not in that kind of a global scenario or a global sense that the United States has, but is certainly concerned about its immediate region, and which have a tremendous significance for India's strategic interests. So there is a little bit of a convergence as well as a disconnect. Now coming to the...
So before you get further, could I give a larger framework of what the global conflicts are at this stage? And we could probably examine this relationship in the backdrop of those. So for that, what I'll do is, if you have a look at this map, this map gives you the global conflicts which are going on at this point of time. Ukraine, the northernmost. Then you have the widening conflict in West Asia. And when I say West Asia, it's a compact of 3 conflicts. Israel Hamas, which has been going on from October 7th. Then the Red Sea activity of Houthis, and the Somali pirates have joined in to widen this of the Somalian coast, where USA and India are in operation. Then, of course, you have the problem between Iran and its outreach, or rather its militias, which are operating in Iraq, Syria, and to some extent in Pakistan, and the exchanges of fire there. So that's a third angle there. Besides this, there's a lot of tension going on in the South China Sea, notwithstanding, not least, but not the last, or rather, last but not the least, in the AFPAC region and in Myanmar, there is a lot of chaos going on. What we have seen, sir, if you agree with me, in the past 3 4 days,
Mm.
we've undertaken, you know, a whole lot of anti-piracy operations successfully. USA has taken up a lot of strikes against the Iranian-backed militias and Houthis to keep the Red Sea lane open. So, effectively, what we are seeing today is a shift in the Indo Pacific construct. Earlier, the Indo Pacific construct largely focused on the Western Pacific. Today, the shift is this side. And for the first time, probably in history, India and USA are operating in sync, operational sync with each other to ward off the problems. USA is operating at a particular level in this entire episode, and India is operating at another level to keep the sea lanes open. To that extent, the Indo Pacific construct is gaining new meaning in the North Arabian Sea. Simultaneously, as you had mentioned, India is quite bothered about and it's worried about its own, you know, immediate neighborhood. We see the problems in Maldives, we see problems in Myanmar. We've seen, of course, Pakistan is going into some kind of new stability stroke instability after 7th, after the selections. I wouldn't say elections, the selections on 7th. And then, of course, China is still making its inroads into Bangladesh and Nepal. So we have a new paradigm here. In in this paradigm, we see that at times USA and India have had differences of opinion. So I think there's a new story which we have to reset our relationship. And of course, last but not the least, what's happening in Philippines, what's likely to happen in Taiwan, because a lot of action going on in Fujian, right, where the Chinese are trying to do a lot of things to show that they are preparing for war. So what happens there? If something happens there, how do India and China? I mean, how do India and USA react? So this whole relationship I see in three different categories and three different levels. So as you rightly said that there are a whole lot of convergences, but we have a different perspectives also. So in view of all this, sir, I would request you to start at one end and then we'll see how things move to the other end.
Okay.
All yours,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you for providing that framework for discussion. Okay, let me start by changing global perspectives because I think it's important to highlight the global dynamics that are at play and which are basically some of the very key drivers to what we are discussing. What we are seeing is the emergence of a bipolar global order and which is undermining the US unipolarity. China has become a peer competitor from the United States and along with Russia as old foe. Both of them are challenging the United States unipolarity, and it is challenging them both in East Asia, it's challenging them in Europe, and now it is also challenging them in West Asia, stroke Middle East. Not so much directly, but fairly large amount of it indirectly. The sum total of this is that India is becoming strategically more important for United States in managing this challenge. And this is an important facet because that there is this convergence between two power blocks of China and Russia who are strong militarily, and China is strong even economically and technologically, and Russia is also strong technologically. There is a very clear understanding within the United States that it is important to have India as a strategic partner, particularly in the manner it is increasingly being accepted now where it is located. India straddles not only the Indian Ocean region, but in terms of influence, also straddles the South China Sea and right up to East Asia to a limited extent. So, to that extent, India's power uh, and strategic location are becoming very central to the emerging dynamics that are taking place over here. But like you rightly said, there are key differences. Now, these differences need to be highlighted and understood. Sorry, underscored. First is the Ukraine war. India has both principle and strategic view on the role of Russia in this conflict. The fact that the Russia has attacked the sovereign country is a wrong. India agrees with that. Like the Prime Minister said, this is not a century of wars, era of wars. But the fact is that they were driven to it is because of the expansion of NATO right on its doorstep. The second element of this is that from Indian perspective, Russia remains an important player both for our meeting our defense as well as strategic needs. There is another geopolitical perspective. The geopolitical perspective has to be understood is this, that if India breaks up its relationship or dilutes its relationship with Russia, then what we have is in the entire Eurasian continental construct a convergence between China and Russia. And with those convergences now emanating also both in the East in terms of a new alignment taking place, which is Russia, China, and North Korea, and in the West, which is Russia, Iran, China, and Pakistan is also becoming a member of this and trying to cover the Northern Arabian Sea. So, in these dynamics, for India, relationship at one level, we have to maintain some degree of relationship with Russia, but on the other level, we need to we have to have a certain degree of credible partnerships and relationships with United States. So therefore, India-US relationship has to be seen from a broader strategic perspective. The strategic perspective is this, that in Indo-Pacific, we have a common challenger, that is China. But the challenger perspective to dealing with the challenger between us and the Americans are different. For the United States, China is a peer competitor, and China, whose core thinking is that to undermine US presence and US military capacities and capability in Asia, thereby pushing the United States into a second great power in Asia, and that will lead to what they believe is a Sino-centric Asia, which leads to a Chinese dominance. This is clearly against our interests. So we join with the United States as part of quadrilateral, which is part of maritime domain initiatives. We do a large number of exercises. We train together. The whole idea is, and we share intelligence. The whole idea basically is that to contain and constrain China. Containment is the American issue. Ours is a constraining China. We are also aware of the fact is that if China is not constrained, China will further take over the South China Sea. It is already converted into its lake. It administers the South China Sea, and thereafter it will start moving towards the Indian Ocean. And we are seeing what is happening in the Indian Ocean. We so to that extent, we have to be clear that we have a certain degree of convergences with the United States. Having said that, I'll come to strategic neighborhood a little later on. But having said that, there is a problem. The problem basically is this: is the United States is currently focused on East Asia, Western Pacific, building up bilaterals, trilaterals, minilaterals to ensure security of its interests and to undermine the Chinese over assertions on its gray zone and its attempts to intimidate and tomorrow may offensively attack Taiwan. In that, rightly brought out by the general, the South China Sea is becoming an important player, and Philippines is becoming a critical element. Why Philippines? If you see the map, where Taiwan ends, there is a channel. I forget the name of the channel. Bhoya channel,
Bashi
I think.
channel, sir.
Huh?
Bashi channel.
Mashi channel. Sorry, the
Bashi
Mashi
channel.
channel, and then you link up with Philippines. Now it is 5 days sailing time from Guam for the U.S. forces to enter into this area. So therefore, the security of this lane becomes critically important. And because of the security of this lane is critically important, Philippines is becoming a linchpin of the American strategy in this region. And if you notice that there have been large number of joint patrolling, joint exercises, and the Chinese are pretty unhappy about it. Now we come to the Middle East. That's the area which the general talked about. In Middle East, there are three elements at play. Like you rightly said, there's a Hamas-Israel war, which is continuing to no end. And I don't think the Israelis have any idea how long it will take, nor they don't know, they don't even understand what is the concept of victory. Because in our discussions with the Jerusalem Institute of Strategic Studies, we try to elicit this answer. We could not get a clarity. Added to that is this now the new element of Houthis are coming in. Houthis are in support with Hamas and with certain elements. The Houthis are attacking shipping in the Red Sea, as well as now they have also started to attack shipping in the Northern Arabian Sea. Now, this has become a point of convergence. Why? Between us and the Americans. There is no official convergence issue, but there is a huge amount of discussion, discourses, and understanding of to how to handle this problem. The problem is being handled by a concert of the so-called coalition under that some Sea Guardian, whatever Guardian name that the operation is being called. Under that operation, they are trying to manage the Houthi problem in the Red Sea, and India, along with its deployment of 13 first-line warships, is now trying to deal with this problem in the Northern Arabian Sea uh, to ensure that the critical supply lines are kept open. For India, it is critical because all our majority of oil from Russia and other trade from Europe passes through this. Even more importantly, we are providing close to about $200 billion plus worth of finished petroleum products to Europe, and those products are going through through this region. So to us, it's critical. And what is also more important is that in the last couple of weeks, as everybody knows, that we have mounted very effective counter piracy operations and freed our neighbor Sri Lankans, our good friends Pakistanis and Iranians from the trouble which is being done by these pirates. So so there is and this is important. It is important for our American friends. And only yesterday, no, 2 days back, in our discussion with Americans, we are saying that this narrative of India playing an important role in keeping the sea lines of communication open and dealing with this piracy threat is not fully being appreciated in the United States. Your discourses, your writings, your think tank perspective, and even within the administration, while they respect it, but it's not being fully appreciated. So when we talk about I2U2 or we talk about IMEC, the criticality of India's role is becoming apparent. And this is an important issue that we need to focus ourselves upon. I'll stop here. If you have any things to add or correction, I'll come back. I'll have more to say, but I'll say it a little later. Okay.
Yeah, you touched upon a very important thing, sir. And in my way of thinking, if you look at the Red Sea, and I'll put the map up so that people are in focus. Uh, if you look at the Red Sea, and if you look at the shipping in that area, or for that matter, in the Gulf proper, USA is very active. It is, against, like you said, the Iranian-based rebels, whether they be Houthis or in Iraq or in Jordan or in Syria. If they're not, all the shipping will get jammed further and the situation will only get worse. So they're doing it. But at the same time, one thing which has come out very clearly is that it is also beyond the United States to handle the new emerging threat or the re emerging threat of the Somalia coast of pirates. And that this action could spread to the North Arabian Sea. And the important point which you mentioned about Iran, Pakistan, China, and Russia playing their hands as per their interest to disrupt oil flows in this area or the energy flows in this area. I don't think without the effect or without India's operations out here, USA can, achieve anything. In fact, I don't think they can achieve anything. The second thing which has come out very clearly is the Chinese are probably either incapable or not willing to get their hands dirty in this game, and they're laying off. Why they're laying off, we don't know. But I think they're missing a damn good opportunity at making a lot of statements. But having said this, uh, I would like your views because we spoke of the Quad and everything there. But that whole story of operationalizing the Quad into something which can be operationally effective in combat situations is happening here. And this is something which we need to talk of increasingly in the Indo-US construct. Your views on this part, sir?
See, as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned and quadrilateral and our relationship with the United States is concerned, there are two perspectives. Perspective number one is, like I said, the entire focus of the United States and its allies. Okay, United States and its allies is focused on East Asia and managing the Chinese threat in East Asia. The Chinese are playing an interesting game through anti-access area denial strategy, through show of force, etc. It is containing United States and its major allies in East Asia, and thereafter, what they are trying to do is two things. Southeast Asia is being overtaken or being brought under its sphere of influence both economically, politically, and militarily. And consequently, it has become a South, like I said, South China Sea has become a Chinese lake. Chinese administer. You cannot do an exercise over there. You have to take their permission. Chinese naval militia, maritime militia, is overactive, as we have seen what is happening in Thomas Shoal. So the question basically is this: is that Chinese are now controlling the South China Sea. It has got two perspectives. One perspective is South China Sea is an important area to provide depth to the Eastern China or the Chinese coastline, which is the nerve center of Chinese economic and political power. The second element is that having built the 450 odd ship navy and four aircraft carriers, which are now going to be operational, all of them will be operational by 2035. Third one is now being launched, as we all know. The question comes about is that the focus is incrementally going to shift into the Indian Ocean. Now, here again, there is a problem coming up. The problem coming up is that the area of Bay of Bengal is becoming a China centric or China controlled arena. How? There is, we see on Coco Islands, the Chinese have established advanced facilities, information facilities, surveillance facilities, and tomorrow they can bring in a battery or two of ASBMs, whatever they want to bring, depending upon their relationship with Myanmar. And as we understand, Myanmar is getting increasingly indebted, including the new forces, the independence forces. They are also are getting help from the Chinese. So Chinese are looking at both ends of the thing. They're looking at the military as well as the independent forces. The second element is this: is that Chakfu is being securitized primarily because Chakfu is becoming a major area for for oil pumping, for oil resources, which are now coming with large tankers to single buoy moorings, and from single buoy moorings is being pumped into the pipelines, which go to the southwestern China for where they are refined. We have also heard that attempt is being made to create a new link through Thailand, through those two ports, or not Karakanal, but through the port systems. So the question basically is this, and then we also have this whole Chittagong, where the Chinese are coming in a big way, and they have created a submarine base. So in our backyard, there is a large amount of Chinese movements taking place. Now we go down further south. We go to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka might say anything in good measure, but the fact of the matter is that Hambantota is 99-year lease on them. The Hambantota airport is under the Chinese control. Who can stop the Chinese from staging forward if they want to do? Now, next issue comes in the new element which has now been brought in by the Maldives. Maldives sits astride one of the key sea lines of communication. And if there is a Chinese deployment over there, they not only will they pick up the trade, our movement of our shipping in that area, all our western fleets and the eastern fleets who transit from one and the other, their shipping will be picked up. So the question is not this simple thing about what is happening, all what is Chinese can do, etc. It is the question is this: is that it provides at forward basing facilities, information facilities, backed up by the satellite communication that the Chinese have all along. It becomes an area which becomes an area of serious concern to us. Now, our problem with the Americans with this is that they are simply not capable. They do not have the resources fighting the Ukraine war, now supporting the Israelis, and now fighting these crazy wars in amongst Houthis and 7, 8 asymmetric conflicts with Iraq and Syria, etc. They simply do not have the resources to deploy in this region. If they do not have the resources to deploy in this region, and I have already talked about the fact there's a new coalition of Pakistan, Iran, Russia, and China coming up in this, who are doing exercise. They've done 3 exercises already,
Yes.
and so the question that comes from Indian perspective is this, and this is something which we keep pointing to the American friends: is that our immediate security interests are not being addressed directly. If we are part of the Indo-Pacific, if we are part of the quadrilateral, it cannot happen that the core security concerns of only allies and America in the East Asia and Western Pacific are addressed. India's core concerns are not addressed. This is something which is taken seriously by the Americans, but I do not think that this is going to happen anytime soon. There's one
So
more
that's the
element.
point. No, that's the point which I was trying to make. So, so far, we've been having a position where we've been saying that our core concerns are not being met, right? And so far, the focus of America and its allies, I'm talking of allies, allies like
Mhm.
Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Their focus was on Western Pacific, South China Sea containing China, etc., etc. But today the reality is that USA is well fixed, if I may say, in West Asia. It cannot get out of that area, and leave Israel to its this thing, because Israel will get finished off in some form or the other. So it has to be there. It also has to keep the shipping lanes open. There's no choice, because its entire allies depend on the shipping lanes being open only through USA. So USA is committed there. USA, like you rightly said, is stretched in terms of being able to handle the area of South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits. And now, if China comes and sits in Maldives or Hambantota, it not only affects India, it affects them also. So I'm sure the US people understand that there's a new paradigm, there's a new threat emerging, and the old Indo Pacific has to expand into the new Indo Pacific right up to the Arabian Sea and the east coast of Africa. So that is from their point of view. From our point of view, with the new North Arabian front opening up, I would call it a front, because I don't see this going away so fast. And I also see a lot of our naval commitment there for a long time to come, right? And I also see a lot of cooperation which is required operationally, and maybe in combat situations between USA and India. And at the same time, we have a problem in our immediate neighborhood. You forget the Pacific part of the Indo at this point of time. Isn't there a case for us to also rethink our relationship with Russia, China, sorry, with USA, and take it to the next level? I mean, as much as we expect the US to rethink their ideas about India, isn't there a case for us to rethink our relationship with USA?
Sir, we make 3 points to Americans. Point number one that we make is this: is that if we are looking at Indo-Pacific, we must have an Indo-Pacific strategy. We cannot have an East Pacific strategy or a Pacific strategy or Asia Pacific strategy. We need to have an Indo-Pacific strategy. The second point we make to them is this: is that we understand that the United States does not have the capacity and the capability. They do not have the capacity. They are overextended. That our next point to them is this: why can't we look at AUKUS kind of programs that you are putting together with Australia and UK, and also now try to build up facilities with capacities of Japan and Korea? Why cannot we have a more active program? We have done couple of exercises on critical technology areas. We have done. I mean, I've been leading the Indian side on that. But the fact of the matter is this: is that Americans are slow on this. The third element is that what is happening right now is this: that the Australians are being encouraged to play a more important role in the Indian Ocean. As also, if you must have had that the British will come in, the French will come in, etc., etc. The point from our perspective is very simple. We are maintaining a 17 or 18 ship patrol right through all over the critical areas 24 by 7. It hurts our capacities, it hurts our capabilities, and it has affects our operational efficiency. We want some of these roles to be taken up by these partners. The simple answer is that they are simply not forthcoming. Although I'm told the Australians are now showing some interest in. So we have a lot of talk about talk, but we do not have anything substantial on the plate as we discuss. And this is a reality. So therefore, what happens? What happens is this: is that we now have to create capacities and capabilities on our own and to deal with these challenges. So, one of the issues that you rightly pointed out that has emerged is the key role India can play in maintaining the Northern Arabian Sea and the sea lines of cooperation open for them. You also made an important point. This is not the, or we are not the only one who get their oil and trade. The Japanese get it, the Southeast Asians get
Yeah,
it, and
complete. Japanese are 90% dependent on this.
so the question which we can always raise with these guys is this: is that why are you making us do heavy lifting? Why are we doing this heavy lifting? What is your contribution to those heavy lifting? Please believe me, our discussions with the Japanese and others are very, very frank. But the reality of the matter is this. The Japanese simply say we either we are stalled by our pacifist constitution or we do not have the resources. So the the unfortunate problem right now is this: while we have an understanding, convergences, etc., on paper, and we all realize that it is not percolating into anything substantial, except the fact. I give you a small example. Qatar has a huge air base and a of the Americans. Why can't we have a information sharing agreements with those guys? Although, mind you, we have become now this combined task force, this what is it called, combined task force, um, uh, part of that uh,
Sea Guardians.
in Bahrain. So we have become
Okay.
part of that. So that will increase our coordination, etc., etc., etc. But the point is not coordination, sir. The point is the 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 assets being available. In answer to IMAC, the Turks are trying to create a separate area of zone of passage to create a new route. Now that route will go through Syria and Iraq, and that would then align itself. And who will protect it? The Chinks and the Russians. So the problem for us is this: is that we have to have a relationship with the Russians, but Russians are in a different camp, as particularly in these areas are concerned. Americans do not have the influence. America will come and influence over there in the Red Sea or around the Mediterranean Sea to support the Israelis. They are not going to come into this part. From us, the last vestige of the American presence is in Dago, Russia archipelago, where there are a man, dog, and couple of aircrafts. And that's it. So our problems are, and rightly said, is that Chinese influence is increasing. How do we handle this? We are handling it right now. We are doing a great job of handling it right now. But the question is, if push comes to shove, how do we manage this? So this is something which we keep telling the American friends, and they realize it, but they do nothing about it. Unfortunately, it's sad.
So I go with what you're saying, so that they know it, and they probably don't want to do it deliberately, and they probably don't want to do it deliberately because they feel that India is not committed to their way of thinking, and it has not decoupled or de-risked itself adequately from Russia. So that's their problem. That's the way they look at it. Okay, having said this, we know we are in a life situation, and we don't have easy answers, and we don't have internal answers as at now. Maybe 5 years, 10 years hence, when Atmanirbharta comes about, if it does come about, then we might have answers. But is there a case for us to start at least enumerating a new Indo-Pacific strategy or a construct, like you said? Because so
Yes.
far we have not spoken of it. Is there a case for India to start saying Quad doesn't mean Quad's area of responsibility and influence has to come from the east coast of Africa to almost the Japanese coast and the Australian coast, so the Guam line or the second China violence. Some kind of a thing isn't there for us need for us to talk of these things.
So you're right, absolutely correct. We do talk about these things, but please understand, people like Kurt Campbell and all that, who are the so-called czars of the Indo-Pacific strategy with the United States and their partners in Australia, Japan, uh, and even Korea. See, they don't look at these things from that perspective. They they for the so what what do we say? We say securitize the Quad. They say no, Quad is not securitized. We cannot Quad is a soft security mechanism. It's for shaping the social impact on the region. We want to economic impact on the region, technological impact of the region. It's part of our strategy to contain China's multiplex influences. We are not going to get involved in this thing. We do one exercise, as you know, Malabar. We do it this thing, but that exercise is only always done with the perspective of show of force, interoperability, capability, etc., for contingencies in the areas which are far away from us. They are not our centric contingencies. So the question basically is this: is that how do we how do we push our other quadrilateral partners? See, Japanese are very clear. They say we are this thing constrained by Article 9. We are now trying to get uh, capability extended fire capabilities on through these tomahawks and all that to protect ourselves. That's it. That's what we're going to do. Australians are a man and a dog. They have don't have
Yeah,
anything.
that's no.
AUKUS program is going to come up only in 2040. Koreans are already having a problem with North Korea having declared that South Korea is not part of North Korea, and therefore it is an enemy territory, and we will deal with it as it is. Where do we get the resources? This is the problem, sir. I mean, it's all very well to talk about architecture. We talk about architectures all the time, but it always boils down to the soft security issues, soft ideas, understanding, etc., etc. But they do not convert anything into tangible security perspectives, which are of consequence to. So my I always tell to this thing is quadrilateral relationships in terms of a broader Indo-Pacific framework do not mitigate any of my direct challenges. In fact, if you by some of your actions like you do in Myanmar, what arming a couple of those militias as well as in Bangladesh, they create problems for us. So this
In
is
fact,
the story,
in
sir.
fact, no. This, in fact, sir, the way I look at it, Myanmar is a great opportunity. If we do the right things in Myanmar, China will be in a lot of pain. Actually, you can carry the fight into the Chinese court completely. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And if we handle Bangladesh, I mean, India and USA probably have to start thinking on the same plane. And that's something which I unfortunately not seen happening.
I agree with you. I mean,
So
you
that
see,
is
Myanmar
something
is
which,
a great success opportunity for us. Yes, we can influence it. But if you recollect, after 2010 elections, we did a lot of work inside this thing. We worked with the Japanese. We created new economic zones. We did all that work that we did. But I have been 2, 3 times to Myanmar talking to the military myself and giving lectures over there. The, the question basically then boils down to this sustainability. How were we able to sustain it? Now we are talking about building a fence on the Manipur border, Myanmar border. So what you are doing is effectively cutting off India's access into ASEAN. I mean, we have a trilateral highway. You are aware of that. I mean,
yeah,
we
yes,
could
yes.
not convert it. In Kaladan area also, the road which is going into Mizoram, that is now under the control of the independent forces. So my point, bigger point at issue is that we can have ideas, implementing them, and having a political will to implement them alone by India will not work. We need to have thing. We can have a conversation with the Americans, sure. We can talk about a new architecture. I would love to sit down with you and define a new architecture which we can have take to the Americans. Sure, we will. We should do it. In fact, let's see what their response is.
Yeah,
I mean, we
but
are on the
this,
my last point. We are
yes,
on the threshold of launching a major joint study with the Americans on gray zone operations, particularly in Indian Ocean and India's neighborhood. So that would be one of the start points of our looking at common challenges. Sorry, yes.
no problem, sir. The issue is that, having said this, because the problem is at our doorstep, right? And our doorstep, right and proper, either you look to our east or to our west or to our south, we are now in this situation. Is there a case for us to change our own policies? Because for a long time, we've not been committal. We've not committed. One of the problems with the American establishment, or for that matter, any writing you see on the Quad or the Western system, or whatever, whichever architecture you call, they feel that India doesn't commit and it wants to completely have its autonomy and multilateralism and everything. To the extent that at some points of time, people have said India wants to have its cake and eat it too. So,
Sir,
is
is
there a
called
case for us to change
no,
our thinking?
no, no. I mean, I will go along with you, but I don't want to think. But I call this a ensnaring strategy. They are
Okay,
ensnaring us to moving away from being a partner, global strategic partner, to an ally. An ally means that you will be committed to the American interests and the larger interests. And what one of our problems with the United States is that they give us security assurances that there is always a commitment dilemma. We face what we call a commitment dilemma from the United States. We get assurances. There is no doubt that we're getting a lot of information from them. We don't no doubt they're opening our doors to us. But the question is, all these elements are way in the past, and by that time, the comparative power balance may shift. It is lucky for us that we are economically getting stronger. That would make difference, and it's also equally lucky for us, as you very rightly point out in your large number of podcasts, is that the China is suffering. China is suffering militarily. China is becoming economically weak. The social cohesion within China is getting impacted. True, but the question basically is this: is that what is the architecture and what are the contours of that architecture? And here I would put forward another proposition, and that my proposition is this: is that, and I told this to the Vietnamese the other day, is that we need to work together. Vietnam, Indonesia, India need to work together to create a strong capacities and capabilities to ensure the Chinese do not roughshod anybody in the South China Sea. Chinese are constrained. Chinese maneuvers are constrained. But you know what the Vietnamese say? They say we have a three no policy.
okay.
So
What does
so
it mean? No.
basically, so we don't want to interfere in Chinese. We do not want to go against the Chinese, and we want to remain neutral. That's it.
Right.
Indonesians, no military capability, don't want to power. They want to buy a large number of aircrafts. You keep hearing all about them in this thing, but they are all bought from private money. So they have to raise the money, but they don't have the money. So it's a very tricky situation for a country like India. So, what India has to do, you are rightly saying, and I totally agree with you, remain heavily engaged with the United States, continue to push the agenda, continue to push this thing, and seek a more securitized quad, in which the quad which does not only look at the problems in East Asia and South China Sea, but also looks across the Malacca Strait and into our problems, and connect with those, with what is happening in West Asia, to have a seamless security architecture. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But that's something which is work for us, and we have to work on it. And I think you've
Yeah.
given me an idea to write a paper on
No,
this issue.
I mean, to be very honest, sir, I don't see any other option. I don't see any other option for USA but to securitize COD. I don't see another option because USA will be committed in the North Arabian Sea and in the Eastern Indian Ocean for a long time to come. Because this, like you rightly said, the crux of the problem is that between Israel and Hamas. And as far as Israelis don't know how to handle Hamas,
Hmm.
that problem will not go away, and USA has to get committed here. And in the past 1 month or 3 months or 4 months, what we have seen is the West Asia crisis is slowly increasing in its width, activity, and scope, right? In geographically. And slowly our activity or involvement here is going up. Willy nilly, there is no choice but for us and USA to start acting in sync with each other as the two major navies. We all know that the Europeans don't have capacities. The UK, Shuka, and all no fellow will come because they also reduced to, actually, in my way of looking at it, they're reduced to a
Zero.
man and a dog kind of a thing. They don't have the capacities. The only two capacities which are dominant are that of the Indian Navy and the US Navy. The rest are all peripheral to the whole story. If this be so, and it is also in US interest that China doesn't establish a base between Hambantota and Maldives. There's no doubt
Yes.
about that, right? I have my own doubts about Kyakfu for many other reasons because the Chinese are in as much pain. As much as we like to think we are in under think that they'll enter through Kyakfu, I feel that the Chinese are also under pain from Myanmar. I'm not too worried about that. But Maldives, Hambantota thing is important. It's important for us and for USA. In this light, the 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 requirement of a new construct, a security compact, and probably even a permanent security, permanent secretariat for the court is something which we have to start thinking of. But then, like you said, that's a work in progress. We have to start. And in this case, I also feel that this has to start from us. The initiative has to come from us. Because I don't think the US will respond immediately. And maybe if Trump comes, he'll jump at it, but we don't know about that as yet. So, with this, sir, these are the broad views. The last point I'd like to make is for
Mhm.
us as India to undertake any of this, right, we need to have our economy firing on all cylinders. And for our economy to be firing on all cylinders, this area has to be secure. It's a conundrum. It's a catch 22 India is in. And I do hope that those who matter in Delhi realize this. Unless we take the initiative, these problems won't go away. And we might end up, my fear is that we might end up on the back foot uh, by allowing China a leeway into this area. And that will be disastrous. Whether we like it or not, China has its presence in the Arabian Sea. It's lying low and probably biding its time. So, your final comments on this, and then we'll take some questions.
I totally agree with you, sir. These are my thoughts too. My worry is that we are allowing a lot of leeway. Nepal, Bhutan, uh, Bangladesh, we are supporting. We are okay right now, but it's a single lady we are supporting who is becoming increasingly unpopular. And then in Sri Lanka, we have a reasonable relationship, but we do not know. when things will go out of place. But we need to have a, so India has to show political will, sagacity, and courage to ensure that our neighbors are on our side. They understand our issues, and like we also need to understand our neighbors' concerns and work in a cooperative manner without enforcing our, our kind of a Monroe doctrine on them, to ensure that they do not allow themselves to become to be exploited by the Chinese. That's what I would say, and I agree with you
Yeah,
totally.
I think so, sir. And the last line on this is that if you want to do all this, if India has to do all this, it has to change its politico-military thinking. It has to commit by putting money on the table, and which was actually not evident in our budget yesterday, right? Because unless you put money on the table and you build capacities, your future is not going to be that rosy, and your economy might get hurt. That's
I
my
get
way
your
of
point.
looking at it.
I agree with you.
And this is something I'm going to talk of tomorrow. When we look at the defense budget, everyone in the media talks of the defense budget as having done something incrementally great, but I feel it has not done. And the events around us are bearing it out. And we'll talk of it tomorrow for all viewers. When you join me in the open hour and open session, we'll talk of this budget. We'll also talk of something which is next to it, which the brigadier spoke of, that MQ-9 Reaper, and what is the impact of buying it or having delayed buying it so far, and the impact of not developing our own capabilities, because all these are linked. And we'll talk
Yeah.
of it tomorrow.
Good point, sir.
Yeah,
Good point. I agree with you. It's area after my heart.
and this is something which I think we have actually, if you look at it, it is our collective failure, the collective failure of our politicians and our security setup. Right. Now, having said this, sir, can we take a few questions with your permission?
Yes, sure.
Right. Arunachal, he says, what is the real flashpoint between USA and India? It's a very basic question. I wouldn't call it a flashpoint. I would call it a difference of opinion or whatever it is, if you could put it across.
Yeah, actually, we have an ideologically differences. When when the Americans look at things, please try and understand. America is what I call a satiated power, in the sense that they have geography, they have economics, they have technology. So, and they live so far away from the rest of the world, is that they only come to use their guns and their their commerce and their economy. But that's all. They have no other interest. They do not feel the pain of regional powers, who are always getting caught up in regional conflicts. There is no regional conflict for the Americans. They interfere or intervene in conflicts. So, from Indian perspective, the problem basically is an attitudinal issue and an ideological issue. And United States, having become being a unipolar power for last 75, 80 years, have come to believe is that what they're thinking is right, everybody else has to follow their line of thinking. That's something which is not, and they are not comfortable with either bipolar world or a multipolar world. So we have a huge number of differences. We have a differences in terms of confidence in each other. We have a differences now in Panoon case. We have a differences on the attitudes on the state of our nation, particularly in terms of whether there is a democracy is failing in our country, where there's an institutional takeover by certain elements who are against the thing, or the secular character of a country. So they are their freedom houses and all that keep coming up with these reports. So this is, unfortunately, those are small issues. But as you have seen, and one of the critical aspects of this is that they are also realists. The clearance of the MQ-9B deal, both by the Senate as well as by the House, clearly indicate that the Americans are putting their strategic interests on top of these issues. Although you will find Congressional Research Service papers, etc., uh, writing huge pieces on decline of democracy in India, but there is a real aspect, son, is that we are both democracies, but with different values. Our
Yeah,
values and their values are
absolutely.
not the same.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, sir. And this is one of the problems which we have to contend with. And I think my own personal opinion is we've not been able to put our view across in the manner which we this thing. All democracies are not the same. Each democracy has its own, lives by its own standards and values. And this is something which we have not been able to articulate and put it across. Right? They have been able to articulate their point of view, but we have not been able to articulate. And this is something which our national think tanks have to rethink on in a big way. And this is again a very interesting question, simple but interesting. In case of a worst case scenario playing out, what are India's options?
The question is, where is this worst case scenario going to play out? So,
Let's take
no,
any one. So,
if
for
if we are looking if we are looking at a Sino-centric scenario, uh, the issue is very simple. As far as our borders are concerned, we are reasonably well poised. It will be a localized escalation. I do not see Chinese going to war with India on this issue. Yes, Indian Ocean region can become a flashpoint, but that's going to happen about 8 to 10 years down the line. The India's options are very simple. Like we discussed today, we have to work hard, continue working hard, continue be laboring on our American friends and other quadrilateral partners. We need to securitize this thing. We have to create a larger security architecture if we are going to remain good partners. And number two, and more importantly, is the fact is that we have to create our own capacities and capabilities. Please remember one thing, that Chinese Navy will be operating from far distances from their bases. To be able to maintain and sustain themselves will not be easy. India has already shown its capacities and capabilities. So therefore, it's important. The two things important I'm trying to mention right now are, right, is we have to build up greater capacities and capabilities of our own, and we also have to work on convergences and strategic architectures, which apart from looking at the East Asia, start looking at the Indian Ocean region also, as we see the threat building up, like you rightly said, in the Middle East and Northern Arabian Sea. So we cannot neglect that. So that's what my answer to you is, sir.
I go with you, sir. I'll put it in a slightly different manner. Uh, Before you look at the worst case scenario, look at our own current scenario. The way I look at it, we are in a state of strategic opportunity. I mean, would like to look at it this way for the simple reason that your economy is going on all cylinders. You couldn't have had a better, uh, you know, economic power moving up. You are in control of the situation in the North Arabian Sea, and you're slowly going to get a reputation of being a net security provider in this area because you are one of them. You're only one of the two. Two net security providers in this area today are USA and India, right? Sooner or later, the whether one ship goes to Maldives or one ship comes to Hambantota or not, China's entry into this area has not yet happened. I mean, that's a given as of now. And I don't see it happening for the next 5 to 10 years. And with respect to the fact that they have 450 odd ships and all that, for the reason which Brigadier Sahgal did mention, they have a huge problem internally. And you can't have a state which internally overturns its own problems and starts going all around the countryside and into another ocean to establish things. It doesn't happen that way. And the people who are supposed to give these bases to China also realize the Chinese status. It is not as if, for the first time in the history of, in the in Sri Lanka, for the past 30, 40, 50 years, they've told China at least now for 1 year, don't get your vessels here to Ambandota. It's not a small step, it's a big step. So, are we getting into a worst case scenario, or are we going to get into a stronger scenarios where we have to be more proactive to get into strength? That is the question. I don't see us reacting to a worst case scenario. I would like to see us being building up a strength to be handling better and more complicated scenarios rather than the worst case scenario. I mean, that's my view. So, if you have anything, we could talk about this
Oh, I
because
go, I
other
go along
questions
with
are.
you. I go along with you, sir.
Okay. The next question is: Did you see the rumors about the drone purchase, sir? Uh, uh, the brigadier did mention about it. We've gone about it. A lot of muck has been thrown up in the newspapers, and tomorrow I'll discuss this because I am privy to certain issues of this. Not because I've dealt with this case. I'm not dealt with this case at all. But having dealt with the Americans for the past 20 years, I am privy to how these things could have gone. Because there's a lot of good points in this and there are a lot of bad points also in this. And we have to take it in this thing. Okay, I think this is a important point which he's generally making. Till we get quality equipment from Atmanirbhar Bharat, we need to get the best equipment. Technology, USA is the king. Your view, sir?
Okay, so as far as USA is concerned, what we get from USA, you have to get the differences right. We get platforms by and large from Russia, or we make our own. The only platform that we have got from the American fighting platforms is the artillery gun M1777. That's 177, whatever. That's the only platform that we have got. We get technology equipment, or what we call equipment which uh, enhances our operational capabilities. So in that we are already getting. We got P8Is, we got MQ9Bs, we have C130 Hercules, we got Chinooks, logistic kind of support, combat support elements that we have got, and that we will continue to getting. What we are also going to get from them is that if 414 engine deal, I'm reasonably sure that it will come through. It may not come through to the liking of everybody, but it will come through to a large degree of to help secure us. And here also we have to understand one thing: why are we seeking 414 engines? We are seeking 414 engines. Is basically is this that India has decided that we are not continue to buy foreign aircrafts all the time. We have to create our own aircrafts. हाइब्रिड हो, कुछ हो, अपना बनाना है. और अपने बनाने के लिए हमका भी बन रहा है, और जो है ये मार्क 2 भी बनाना पड़ेगा हमारे को, तेजस मार्क 2. तो उसके लिए वी नीड दिस engines. And while simultaneously, if the new defense technology policy, which is now coming up, which the Prime Minister is trying to push under Defense Technology Council and Defense Technology Secretariat, etc., they come through, then we would be in a much better place. India, remember, is a slow starter. We have a huge amount of coordination problems. We have got too many stakeholders, but we eventually get our act together. That's the important part. Except from the area which is going to discuss with you tomorrow on these drones, where we have pitiably failed, and he will probably give you reasons for the general will tell you the reasons for it. But the point is, yes, we will remain engaged with the United States, but we'll also remain engaged with France. We'll also remain engaged with Russia, and we'll also get technologies like the Adani Group and the other guys are getting from Israel. So it's a multi-basket issue.
That's
At the
how.
bottom of it is, we have to develop our own defense ecosystem. Again, defense ecosystem. My last word: defense ecosystem is not only to build up capabilities for India. Defense ecosystem is equally important for export. You cannot invest crores and crores of rupees to develop any defense industrial base which you can only utilize. You cannot. You cannot sustain a factory which buys 100 artillery guns or 200 artillery guns, and then next order comes after 5 years. No,
Hmm.
you have to have you have to sell those things to outside world,
Yeah,
and that, for
yeah,
that you need manufacturing capacity. You also need certain degree of quality assurances.
yeah. I think so. What you made is a very important point that you can't build a factory for 200 guns and then close it down. Let me give you a practical, I won't say practical example, our own homegrown example. And it's a fact. This is a fact. This is something which is there on ground. In 1984, 84, I'm going back now 30 years, in fact, 40 years. We built a field gun factory in Kanpur. And this field gun factory was to make the 105 light field gun, which we had made. We had designed and made it. And the whole concept of this field gun factory, right, was that at one end of this factory, you got ingots and metal
Hmm.
and various components. And at the other end of the factory, you got a 105 gun. And we had it. In 1984, I've seen this happening. The field gun factory was spewing out guns. And soon the Bofors Khan took place, political issues took place, X, Y, Z. We were supposed to make the Bofors there. We never made it. For some reason, we took the great decision of trying to import 155s and we closed the factory down because we didn't want 105s. Last, when I visited this factory in 2015, I saw these chaps making 9 pistols. This is our, this is a fact. This is a public fact. And that little 9 assembly room was near between the front and the exit gate and the in gate of this factory. Otherwise, the entire factory was lying idle. Now I think it has been revived to some extent. So we have a larger issue internal as far as Atmanirbharta XYZ is concerned. We'll talk about it some other day. Right. Uh, so the last question I'll take is this. With all the hiccups, India-USA relations are slowly but maturely going up only. Strategic dependencies are only increasing. Your views, sir, and then we'll close the show.
I agree with him.
Yeah,
I
this is a
agree
very
with him.
important point.
Uh,
Yes, sir.
we will have hiccups, we'll have problems, but there is a good understanding, strong understanding, and there is also necessity. Please understand the word, I underline the word necessity on both sides to ensure that this relationship is matured, kept on the rails, and we both remain invested.
Yeah, I think so, sir. I'd like to thank you in the end for this discussion which we've had. I hope everyone who's watched this has understood the India-US relationship is an inescapable dependency for both. It is full being different democracies, different cultures, different value systems. We're going to have problems on this. We're going to have problems till the time we remain engaged. But we don't have a choice of being disengaged. And the crux of the whole solution is how do you remain engaged despite having all these problems? And how do you take it forward? Because we don't have a choice with each other. So we'll keep discussing this topic in times to come. But I thought at this point of time, when problems are increasing and the necessity is for greater Indo-US dependency and relationship or relationship based on dependency, we shouldn't slide into a place where we start, squabbling with each other. So with this, all I'll say is thank you, good evening, and sir, thanks a lot for your valued comments. Good evening and Jai Hind, sir.